president of Azerbaijan is an evil buffoon. He's an evil buffoon, but a buffoon nonetheless. The president of Armenia makes one condition on dealing with Azerbaijan. And what the heck is the United States of America going to do about it? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sovereign Artsakh. I am Michael Gavlak, American, non-Armenian, Hollywood Christian guy, talking about Armenia. Before I launch into all this, I think my regular fans are owed an explanation. Early this morning, I posted this video of a burning car. So I was on my way home like 2 a.m. from, well, I won't go into details of what I was doing, but I was the first one that came across this, and I have a friend in town, is in my town, who runs the local newspaper, and I'm like, I better get footage of this and send it to him. He'll appreciate it. And sure enough, I mean, the quickest way to get it to him was to post it on my channel and link it up and send it to him. Sure enough, he was awake and heard about it. His office is right across from the police department and the fire department. They're right next to each other. So he knew something was happening. So he was very appreciative. That's why I did this. Plus, it's cool footage watching our local guys put this fire out. I don't have an update. All right. Before I move on, click subscribe and share this video. You don't have to share the burning car video, but this one that I'm doing right now. And click the like button. All right, I'm not going to read this article. I'm just going to, when I read it, something struck me. Aliev here in his new trophy room, they're comparing him to Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein had a big trophy room, or built things in his own honor. And so that's what this guy's doing, Ilham Aliev, in his military fatigues. Aliev, right down here, who never served in the military, even as his peers fought in the first Nagorno-Karabakh war back in the late 80s, early 90s. So he never served in the military. So he looks like a complete buffoon. Again, a well-funded and evil buffoon, but a buffoon nonetheless. This would be equivalent to, like, President Donald Trump or even President Joe Biden dressing up in military fatigues and wandering through the military complexes. It's like neither of them served in the military, and they don't deign to be a military person, but it's funny. Like, if he does fall, if the same fate befalls him as Saddam Hussein, I don't think anybody will be too upset. All right, I just want to move on to this real quick. So the Armenian president is meeting in Georgia, one of their closest allies directly north of Armenia. Armenian president, let them return our boys and girls first before talking to Azerbaijan about anything, period. Now, that is the right response. It's like, how you can't negotiate with people who are violating agreements that you've signed, that they've signed, that your negotiator and mediator Russia has signed. We are not on an equal footing because let them return our boys and girls first before talking about anything with Azerbaijan, and then we will think about the next step. Armenia's President Armen Sarkisian on Friday stated this in Tbilisi, Georgia, speaking with the Armenian reporters. The restoration or normalization of bilateral relations cannot be at the expense of one party, at our expense. I cannot forget the Armenian genocide as history. Put it all aside if the other side does not take any steps to recognize it or apologize for it. When that happens, then we will think. Then it will be clear, Sarkisian said. So he's kind of lumping these two things together. Return our prisoners of war and recognize that there was a genocide against our people. And asked whether in his opinion U.S. President Joe Biden will use the word genocide in his April 24th message, coming right up, the Armenian president responded, I have my analysis, and it would be wrong if the president of the Republic of Armenia says that he has expectations. After all, it will be the decision of the U.S. president, not mine. We will give an assessment when the decision is made. I can analyze, but it would not be right for me to voice it. All right, let's move on to the United States. Senator Menendez, who I've mentioned many times on this channel, he's a senator who's been rallying for Armenia, along with other congressmen and senators, but he's kind of taken the lead on this for the last couple of years, by all accounts. He calls on U.S. government to press Azerbaijan for releasing Armenian POWs. All right, so politicians are going to say what they're going to say, but this guy has been consistent. He's pushing Biden to recognize the Armenian genocide. I want to read this, and then I want to kind of maybe do a bird's eye analysis of at least the U.S. role in this. During the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee confirmation hearing on Thursday, April 15th, 2021, this is a confirmation of Ambassador Victoria Nuland. I should have looked her up, but it looks like she's been interested or involved in the Nagorno-Karabakh issues for a while as well. But she's being confirmed, or it's confirmation hearing for Victoria Nuland to serve as U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Menendez raised key issues relating to the Armenian people, including the Armenian prisoners of war still unjustly held captive by Azerbaijan and the need for robust humanitarian assistance. Referring to the 44-day war launched by Azerbaijan with the full and open support of Turkey against the Armenian people in Nagorno-Karabakh on September 27, 2020, as an unspeakable tragedy and the inexcusable absence of top-level United States diplomacy throughout the war, Chairman Menendez stated that the U.S. must press Azerbaijan to release the prisoners of war members that it has, which Azerbaijan is refusing to release them in violation of international law. The Ambassador Nuland confirmed that the U.S. has to get the prisoners released. I've worked on Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Nagorno-Karabakh issues for some 25 years, and the way things went down last year was absolutely tragic for so many in the region, Ambassador Nuland continued. During the afternoon hearing, Chairman Menendez also spoke about the significance and urgency of U.S. humanitarian assistance to Artsakh and the importance of ensuring that the Armenians displaced from their homes in Nagorno-Karabakh get the assistance they need. Ambassador Nuland replied in full agreement about committing to robust humanitarian assistance, including demining funds, and to ensure the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Armenia and that it can make its own decisions. Okay, I don't need to read. Oh, I do want to read one more thing. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has spoken about needing to be clear-eyed regarding trends in Turkey. We've got a lot of work to do there in our bilateral relationship to make clear our concern about not only what Turkey's doing outside its country, but also what it's doing inside its country. Oh, up here, Ambassador Nuland discussing having conversations with Turkey. Yeah, because this is Turkey's war. Azerbaijan may be in a more economically healthy stance right now than Turkey. Turkey's the big brother, and it's one nation, two states. As I continue to, they are united in their pursuits and their desires to eliminate Armenia and Armenians. All right, so there are three things on the table here. There are the urgency of the prisoners of war right now. Some 260 prisoners of war being held by Azerbaijan in violation of the treaty they signed or the agreement they signed, in violation of international law. Prisoners of war right now being held in Azerbaijan. Armenians, both civilians and military prisoners of war. Number two, the recognition of the Armenian genocide by the United States government. Second issue on the table. Number three, the recognition for sovereignty of the nation of Artsakh. Not Armenia, Artsakh. Look at the name of the channel here, Sovereign Artsakh. There are three issues: prisoners of war, recognition of the Armenian genocide, and sovereignty for Artsakh. Now, most people who are not apprised of the situation going on will say, well, you know, if those three things are on the table, when you go into geopolitical negotiations, maybe you're going to have to compromise and maybe get 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3, but this is not a place where you're going to compromise. All three of these are non-negotiables. And I don't know that there is anybody in the U.S. government that really sees it that way. I'm just going to mention this book that I read recently. I should probably go and read it again, but it's called Never Split the Difference. It's a former FBI top hostage negotiator, field-tested tools for talking anyone into or out of just about anything. Negotiating as if your life depended on it. This guy talks about you don't compromise. You can't compromise. You have to go in with a mindset of everything that is non-negotiable ahead of time, and you have to coordinate your strategy accordingly. That if you're going to give in or quote unquote compromise on certain things, you need to have your bottom line where you don't, it's certain non-negotiables. So prisoners of war, non-negotiable. Recognition of a historical fact of an Armenian genocide, non-negotiable. And recognition of the truth on the ground for centuries that Artsakh has been independent and sovereign and now needs to be recognized by the entire international community. Those are non-negotiable. So USA, I don't know if you have the people in place to do that, but these are the facts. All right. I have a little bit of a surprise. I'm going to make this. No, I'm not going to make it quick. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to compare and contrast this little scene that we read recently about Soghomon, within 24 hours of the assassination and his detention in the Berlin prison. He's being interviewed, and there's a young Turkish man in the room, and I've already read, I can read it again, the prison diary, but I'm going to compare the memoir version. All right, so let's just read this again. When I stand right next to the young man, on whose face I can see the fire of hatred burning, he turns to me and says, in Turkish, "Pig, how could you cleave that lion of a man, you clown?" And then my translator makes a note here, but I'm going to read it from the memoir in a minute. I don't respond, especially since I don't understand what he's saying. Meanwhile, the interrogator suggests to the young man that he ask me questions in Turkish, but I object by saying that I don't speak his language. Instead, I request an Armenian interpreter. I'm taken back to my cell. All right, now here's that same scene in the memoir. That evening, I was taken to a room on the second floor. An officer with a goatee and glasses was sitting opposite the door, behind a desk on which I saw my pistol. Next to him stood a young man with Asian features. Now, this being written in the 30s and 40s, he's referring, in Turkey, when I went to Istanbul, there's the European side and the Asian side. So we tend to think of Asian as Chinese, Japanese, but he's speaking distinctly of features that it's unclear specifically was referring to, but my historians say there are certain features, and so he's just describing him physically with Asian features, who was staring at me with hate-filled anger. At another desk on the right, an officer was leafing through some documents under the light. In one corner of the desk were a set of blood-soaked. In one corner of the desk were set a blood-soaked European hat in an upside-down position, showing the white lining, and a walking cane. The man with the goatee started to interrogate me. I had difficulty understanding him. After answering one or two questions, I requested an Armenian interpreter, but apparently the interrogator was stubborn. As he went on with his torrent of questions, formulating them in various ways, he wanted to know why and how I had killed Talat Pasha. But how could I answer those questions in my broken German, when I had already decided to describe the horrors which the monster had hatched and to deliver the plotters of the great crime to the judgment of the world? So he's foreshadowing his testimony in court. The interrogator took the pistol in his hand and aimed it at his own temple and neck to find out how I had shot the bullet. Not receiving an answer, he put the gun down and looked at the young man with the Asian features. "You lout! How could you bring yourself to kill that lion of a man?" the latter shouted in Turkish. His question was far more surprising than the fact that he was Turkish. "The same way he killed 1 million innocent people," I replied. "So he speaks Turkish," the interrogator claimed. "Even better than me," the young man answered. Then we can interrogate him with your help. If you please ask him why he killed Talat Pasha. As the young man posed the same question in Turkish, his voice trembled. I flatly refused to answer any questions in Turkish. And that was it. So the young man approached the officer gave him the hat and the cane, and he left the room. All right, so you could say there's a discrepancy, but there really isn't. Here he says he didn't respond to the first question of the man with the Asian features, but turned out to be a Turk. Actually, in the memoir, he says he was probably a relative or a close friend of Talat. So he says he didn't respond, but in the memoir, he does respond. Now, how would or why would in the prison diary the sergeant or the person interrogating him asks, hey, why don't you ask him questions in Turkish? The interrogator suggests the young man ask him questions in Turkish when Soghomon had just said that he didn't respond because he didn't understand what he was saying. I'm thinking probably that the young man said more than that as outlined here in the memoir, you lout, how could you bring yourself to kill that lion of a man? And Soghomon says, the same way he killed 1 million innocent people. So he did respond. And I think clearly the interrogator's like, wait, you understood what this guy said? And then I think after Soghomon, this first response, I think probably the guy said something else. And then the interrogator interjects. So he speaks Turkish. Ask him some more questions. All right. That's just kind of a rough little breakdown. But keep in mind, in the prison diary, he hasn't yet gone on trial and received the verdict. So the memoir is more fleshed out, and the prison diary is just his initial recollection, written about 3 weeks later. So he summarized the first 3 weeks on April 8th, between March 15th through April 8th. He summarized everything. So we'll read some more of this later. So remember to subscribe and click like.